My name is Emily Foster. I'm 45 years old, and I'm the owner of a mid-sized tech company called NextCore Solutions, based in San Jose. On paper, my life looks almost scripted. A spacious house in the suburbs, a reliable new car in the driveway, a husband, Ryan, who still kisses my forehead before he leaves for work, and our son, Jaden, now 12, who can light up an entire room with one crooked smile. If you met me today, you'd probably think, she has it all. But what you wouldn't see is the price I paid for this peace, the people I had to cut off, the blood relatives I had to walk away from, my parents, and my sister Lauren. I didn't stop talking to them because of some small disagreement. I cut them off because they turned my son's pain into a joke, because they decided his disability was something shameful, an ugly detail they wanted to crop out of the frame of their perfect life. As a mother, I can never forgive that, but to understand why, I have to take you back to the beginning, before the screaming at the wedding, before the kneeling at my front door, before my family officially became strangers. Back to March 2021, when my son was 8 years old and my world was shattered in one phone call. That Wednesday had been like most others. I was in a late meeting at the office, going over projections for a new software project, the kind of conversation that usually gets my full attention, until my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I remember frowning at it, glancing at the clock, then quietly slipping out into the hallway so I wouldn't disturb the team. "Hello, this is Emily," I answered. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm. "Ma'am, this is Officer Harris from the San Jose Police Department. Are you the mother of Jaden Foster?" My heart stopped. I felt the world narrow to the sound of that voice and my own breathing. Yes, I am. Is everything okay?" I forced out. There was the faint sound of sirens in the background. "Your husband Ryan and your son were involved in a car accident. They're being transported to the hospital now. You should come as soon as you can." I don't even remember what I said after that. One moment I was in a hallway under fluorescent office lights. The next I was in the parking garage, keys slipping in my shaking hands. I don't remember the drive, just flashes. Red lights, the dashboard clock, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so hard they hurt. For 15 minutes on that road, every horrible image my brain could conjure attacked me at once. Ryan unconscious, Jaden crying for me, blood, sirens. A doctor taking off his glasses and saying, "I'm sorry, we did everything we could." I'm not a religious woman. I've always believed more in clean code and solid contracts than in miracles. But that night, all I did was pray. Please, just let them live. Let my son live. When I burst into the ER, the sharp smell of antiseptic hit me first. Then I saw her. Ryan wasn't there. Instead, on one of the beds, sitting upright, was my son's father in the original story. But in mine, it was Ryan who'd been driving, and Rebecca no longer existed. Here, it was Ryan, sitting on a bed with gauze on his forehead and scrapes along one arm. "Ryan!" I ran toward him. He looked up at me, and his face immediately crumpled. His lips trembled as if he'd been holding everything in, waiting for me to arrive. "Emily!" His voice cracked. "They took Jaden into surgery. They wouldn't let me go in with him." I didn't even realize I'd stopped breathing. My eyes darted instinctively toward the doors of the operating room at the end of the hall, heavy, closed, indifferent. I staggered over to the nurse's station, my voice shaking. "My son, Jaden Foster, 8 years old. Please, what's happening? Is he? A young nurse looked up at me with eyes full of sympathy. That look alone nearly broke me. "He's in emergency surgery right now," she said softly. "The doctors are doing everything they can. He's stable enough for the operation. That's a good sign." A good sign. Those two words became the only thing holding me together. I don't know how long we sat there in that waiting room. The clock said 3 hours, but it felt like an entire lifetime squeezed into a single stretch of fluorescent-lit hell. Ryan sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. There was blood on his sleeve. Jaden's or his, I didn't know. I sat next to him, fingers twisted together so tightly my knuckles were white. Every time the operating room doors swung open for someone else, my heart leapt into my throat. Every time it wasn't our doctor, it crashed back down again. At around 8 p.m., the doors finally opened. A surgeon walked out, mask hanging loose around his neck, exhaustion etched into his features. When his eyes met mine, I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Mrs. Foster?" he asked. "Yes." My voice barely came out. He took a breath. "Jaden is out of critical danger. The internal injuries weren't as bad as we feared. We were able to stabilize him." My knees nearly buckled with relief. I heard Ryan exhale beside me, a sharp, broken sound. But the doctor didn't step aside. He didn't smile. Instead, he paused. And that pause felt like a knife hovering over my heart. However, he continued quietly, there is something else. My mouth went dry. What is it? He sighed, the kind of sigh that only comes from delivering news that will destroy someone's world. His left hand was crushed in the collision. The bones and tissue were severely damaged. We did everything we could, but we couldn't save it. We had to amputate. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard him correctly. It was like the sound in the room just cut. Then the meaning hit me all at once. My 8-year-old son, my little boy who loved building Lego towers and drawing superheroes, my child, who still reached for my hand every time we crossed the street. He would wake up with one hand. A strangled sound tore out of my throat. Ryan reached for me, but I could barely feel his arms. Tears blurred everything. The polished floor, the doctor's kind eyes, the ugly plastic chairs, it all melted into one distorted blur. I'm so sorry, the doctor said quietly. He rested a hand on my shoulder. Jaden is alive, and children are incredibly resilient. With modern prosthetics and therapy, he can still live a full, active life. But I know this is hard news to hear. Hard. That word felt so small for what was happening. My son had lost a part of his body, a part of his childhood, and I was supposed to be grateful that it could have been worse. Logically, I knew the doctor was right. Emotionally, all I felt was a raw, tearing grief. That night, I sat by Jaden's bed in the recovery room, in a chair that might as well have been made of stone. His small body lay there, dwarfed by the hospital bed, his left arm wrapped in thick bandages, ending in a shape that was wrong, unfinished. Machines beeped in steady, indifferent rhythms around us. I didn't sleep. I didn't even close my eyes. Every time I looked at that bandaged stump, it felt like someone pressed a blade into my chest and twisted. An endless loop of guilt played in my head. Why didn't I pick him up from school myself today? Why wasn't I with them in the car? Why didn't I keep him home? Why didn't I somehow stop this? Rationally, I knew I couldn't have predicted a random accident. But mothers don't think rationally when they see their child hurt. We think in what-ifs and if-onlys. Ryan sat on the other side of the bed, staring at Jaden's face like he was afraid our son would vanish if he looked away. At some point, he whispered, "It should have been me." I shook my head, my voice hoarse. No, it shouldn't have been anyone. But inside, I was thinking the same thing. The days after the accident blurred together. I took a break from physically going into the office and worked remotely whenever I could. NextCore could survive a few weeks without me walking its halls. My son could not. Jaden, once talkative and energetic, became quiet. He didn't scream, didn't throw tantrums. Somehow that made it worse. He just folded into himself. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at his bandaged arm, his eyes distant. Other times he'd try to use a hand that was no longer there, reaching out instinctively to grab a toy, only to freeze halfway, confusion and pain flashing across his face. I wanted to scream for him. I wanted to tear the world apart and demand it give his hand back. Instead, I did the only thing I could do. I looked forward. With the help of specialists, we researched options and eventually decided on a high-tech prosthetic hand, one that could read his muscle signals and move flexibly, almost like a real hand. It was the most advanced model available, and it cost more than some cars. People often ask why I work so hard. This is why. So that when life rips something away from my child, I have the power and the money to give some part of it back. To give. The next 4 months of waiting felt long, but they were filled with purpose. Jaden went to physical therapy, learning to strengthen his remaining muscles and prepare his body for the prosthetic. Ryan and I attended sessions, learning how to support him without smothering him. Slowly, his eyes started to regain a little light. He laughed sometimes. Not all the time, not like before, but enough to keep me breathing. The day the prosthetic hand arrived, our house felt like it was holding its breath. A technician came with a sturdy case and a calm, reassuring smile. Jaden sat on the sofa, nervous and excited all at once, his right hand fidgeting with the hem of his t-shirt. "Ready, buddy?" Ryan asked, kneeling beside him. Jaden nodded, eyes wide. I stood just behind them, my own hands clasped tightly together. Mom and Dad had dropped by earlier that weekend with toys and treats to cheer him up. Lauren had come too, playing games with Jaden and making him laugh. In those moments, they seemed like the loving grandparents and aunt I wanted them to be. Part of me believed we were all on the same side. The technician carefully fitted the prosthetic, explaining each step as if he were building a spaceship. When the final strap was tightened and the sensors pressed gently against Jaden's skin, he asked my son to try moving his fingers. Jaden frowned in concentration. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the prosthetic fingers twitched, curved, closed slowly into a fist. Jaden gasped, "Mom, did you see that? I did it!" My vision blurred as tears spilled over. Ryan laughed, a choked, wet sound, and he pulled Jaden into a hug, careful not to jostle the new hand. I reached out and rested my palm on Jaden's hair. "You did, sweetheart. I am so, so proud of you." In that moment, surrounded by the soft hum of our living room, with my son staring at his new hand like it was a superpower, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind us. My parents started visiting more often after that, always with a bag of something. Storybooks, board games, a new video game for our brave little soldier, as Dad put it. Lauren would show up on weekends, kneel on the floor, and lose herself in Lego battles with Jaden, making exaggerated sound effects until he laughed so hard he fell over. I thought this is what family is supposed to look like. Messy, imperfect, but loving, protective. I didn't know then that all of this, the gifts, the visits, the smiles, was just a fragile layer of paint on wood that was already rotting underneath. Because in my family, love had always been conditional, and the moment status and appeara. If you met my family a few years ago, you'd probably think we were close. Before everything fell apart, weekend dinners at my parents' house were almost a ritual. Mom would cook too much food, Dad would pour himself an extra glass of wine, and my sister Lauren would sit across from me, legs crossed, chatting about her latest work drama. Back then, we laughed a lot. Back then, I believed that no matter how complicated life became, we'd at least have each other. After Jaden's accident, those dinners changed. Not immediately, not in any obvious way, but grief has a way of pulling back the curtains on people. You start to see who genuinely cares and who just likes the idea of caring. At first, I thought my parents were trying. They brought presents, hugged Jaden, told him he was strong. They called me brave for handling everything so well. Lauren would text me, asking about his therapy sessions, sending silly memes in our family group chat. Looking back, I realized we were all acting. Them, pretending they were the loving support system. Me, pretending I believed it. I've always been a private person. I built NextCore Solutions from the ground up, starting with late nights and borrowed office space. When the company finally took off and our valuation hit numbers that used to live only in my imagination, I didn't celebrate by shouting it from the rooftops. I celebrated by closing my laptop, turning off the lights in my office, and driving home to have dinner with my family. People think when you become wealthy, you automatically want to show it. The big house, the exotic vacations, the designer labels. I did buy a nice house, a safe neighborhood, a good school district. That wasn't about status. That was about Jaden. I did upgrade the car, something reliable and solid. That wasn't about image. That was about not wondering if my brakes would fail on the freeway. But beyond that, I kept things simple. Jeans, t-shirts, quiet restaurants. And when my parents asked about work, I always said the same thing. Things are okay, busy but manageable. They assumed I was just a mid-level employee in a generous company. When they asked about the house and car, I let them believe they were company benefits, assets loaned to me because I'd been with NextCore for a long time. I didn't correct them. Part of it was self-protection. I'd seen what happened to relatives who suddenly found themselves rich. Cousins they hadn't spoken to in years appeared out of thin air with business ideas and emergencies. Friends turned into investors overnight. Money changed the way people talked to them, looked at them, measured them. I didn't want that, but there was another reason too. My sister, Lauren. Lauren and I grew up in the same house, under the same rules, with the same parents, and yet somehow we were raised in two different worlds. I was the quiet one, the girl who liked books and computer games, and tinkering with broken electronics. I brought home good grades and made safe choices. Lauren was the golden one, pretty, charismatic, the kind of girl who could walk into any room and have 3 people offering her a drink within minutes. Mom loved to show her off. Dad called her our little star. When we were younger, I didn't mind. I was happy in the background, watching from the edges, building my own little universe out of code and notebooks. But as we grew older, Lauren's life became a revolving door of big plans that never quite stuck. New jobs, new hobbies, new boyfriends. When they failed, my parents always had the same script. She'll find her way. She's special. When I failed, the tone was different. You're smart, Emily. You're supposed to know better. Some part of me always knew that if they found out I owned a company worth tens of millions, something would shift. That their affection would suddenly come with expectations. That I'd stop being their daughter and start being their walking safety net. And with Lauren, I worried it would do something worse, feed a jealousy she already tried so hard to bury. So I stayed quiet. I let them believe what they wanted to believe. I thought I was protecting my peace. I didn't realize I was also setting up the perfect blindfold for them and for me. Everything began to tilt in early 2022 when Lauren met Ethan. I still remember the first time she mentioned him over Sunday lunch at my parents' house. We were sitting around the table, plates still half full. Mom had just started one of her favorite topics. So, Emily, how's your little office job going? It's steady, I said, giving my usual vague smile. Busy. Before Mom could press further, Lauren leaned back in her chair and said casually, "Oh, speaking of busy, Ethan hasn't slept more than 5 hours a night this month." Mom's eyes lit up. "Ethan? Who's Ethan?" Lauren's lips curled into a proud, almost smug smile. "My boyfriend. He owns a tech company. They've been expanding like crazy. They just signed with a big client. He's always in meetings. Poor thing." I felt something in my chest tighten. "Oh?" Dad leaned forward, instantly interested. "A tech company, huh? What does he do exactly?" "They build software for small and medium businesses," Lauren said. "Management systems, automation, data analytics. You know, real tech work." The implication wasn't subtle. I smiled politely, cutting a piece of roast chicken on my plate. "That's impressive," I said. "Must be a lot of pressure." "Oh, it is," Lauren replied, eyes shining. "But he's built for it. He started the company in 2021, and it's already taking off. Investors, partnerships, everything." Mom clapped her hands together as if Lauren had personally founded the company herself. "Our Lauren finally picked a real man," she exclaimed. I felt Ryan's hand find my knee under the table, giving it a light squeeze. It was his silent way of saying, "Ignore it. Breathe." I tried. But it didn't end there. As the months went on, every family dinner became the Ethan show. Lauren would launch into detailed updates about his contracts, his connections, his vision. Mom and Dad soaked it in like sunlight. One evening in March 2022, it went further than usual. We were all seated at the dining table. Jaden was at the corner, focused on moving peas around his plate, absent-mindedly adjusting his prosthetic hand whenever it slipped slightly. Lauren was talking about Ethan's company again. "They just landed a partnership with a major client," she bragged. "The contract is huge. Honestly, I don't know how he handles that level of responsibility, but that's what happens when you're the one at the top, I guess." Dad chuckled approvingly. "That's a real man. Taking risks, leading something." Lauren glanced at me, just for a moment. There was something sly in her eyes, like she knew exactly where this was going. Then Mom turned to me and said, with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes, "You hear that, Emily? Same field, but look at the difference. One becomes a company owner, the other stays a, what is it again? Regular employee?" It was a joke. On the surface, the kind of teasing some parents would swear is harmless. But the words landed like a slap. Not because they didn't know the truth, but because they never cared to ask. I held my fork a little tighter. "Work is fine, Mom," I said. "I'm happy with what I do." Dad snorted. "Happy is good, but at some point you should aim higher, no? You're smart, Emily. Look at Ethan. Same industry, but he's building something, taking charge. You could learn a thing or two." My eyes briefly met Lauren's. There it was, that flicker of satisfaction. She liked this. The comparison, the hierarchy. Ryan's hand tightened on my knee again, grounding me. I thought about all the things I could say. I could have looked my parents in the eye and told them that Nextcore's valuation had just crossed $50 million, that the house they looked down on as company property was bought in cash, that the nice car outside was not a benefit, but a choice. I could have told them that in our industry, Ethan's company was a baby, and mine was the quiet adult funding projects he dreamed of. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't change people who refuse to see you. So I swallowed it. I set down my fork, pushed my chair back, and stood up. "Thank you for dinner," I said evenly. "We need to get Jaden home. He has therapy early tomorrow." Mom frowned. "Already?" We haven't even had dessert. It's late, I repeated. My voice was calm, but inside I could feel anger, hurt, and something colder settling into place. Ryan, Jaden, let's go. Ryan stood without a word. Jaden looked between us, sensing the tension without fully understanding it, and quietly slid out of his chair. As we walked to the door, I heard Dad mutter under his breath, always so sensitive. Lauren's soft laugh followed. Maybe one day she'll understand how the real world works. I didn't turn around, but in my chest, something closed. On the drive home, the silence in the car felt heavy. Jaden had a small toy clutched in his prosthetic hand, his right fingers occasionally adjusting its grip as if he were still getting used to the movement. Ryan kept his eyes on the road, jaw clenched. Finally, he spoke. You know, he said quietly, you don't have to let them think what they think. I stared out the window at the passing streetlights. What do you mean? You could tell them, he replied, about NextCore, about the valuation, about the fact that you're not a regular employee. You're the one signing paychecks. You're the one people pitch to, not the other way around. I let out a slow breath. And then what? Ryan glanced at me. And then they'd have to at least adjust the way they talk to you. I smiled, but there was no joy in it. Or, I said softly, they'd start expecting things. Investments, loans, favors. They'd parade me around like a trophy. And Lauren... I shook my head. She'd smile, but inside she would hate me for it. And every time something went wrong in her life, guess who she'd blame? Ryan didn't respond immediately. He knew I was right. I just wanted them to love me as Emily, I continued, not as Emily the rich one. I wanted them to like coming to my house because they like us, not because they want something from us. I wanted... My voice cracked a little. I wanted to believe I was enough, even if they thought I was just a normal employee. Ryan reached over and took my hand at a red light, squeezing it. You are enough, he said, with or without NextCore, with or without their approval. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Then why, I whispered, does it still hurt this much? He didn't have an answer, neither did I. For a while, I pulled back from family gatherings. I still called my parents sometimes, asked about their health, made small talk, but I always seemed to be busy when they suggested a big dinner. Lauren, meanwhile, only grew more radiant in their eyes. Ethan's company was thriving, according to her. New contracts, new offices, new clients. My parents repeated every update like they were reading from a script they'd been waiting their whole lives to perform. In the middle of that year, a proposal crossed my desk at NextCore. It was from a young company looking for partnership and investment, a company specializing in management software for small and medium-sized businesses. They needed capital and technical support. The contract was detailed, reasonable, and strategically smart. On the partnership documents, under partner company owner, there was a name, Ethan Montgomery. I stared at it for a long moment, the pieces clicking into place. So this was the company my parents worshipped. The company my sister proudly wrapped herself in like a designer jacket. I could have declined. It would have been easy to pass, to send a polite rejection and move on. Instead, after careful consideration, I approved it. We agreed to invest $1.2 million over 1 year in 3 phases. With NextCore's backing, Ethan's company would have both the capital and credibility to push through its early growing pains. I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell Lauren, I didn't tell Ethan. In my mind, it was a quiet, generous choice, a way of helping my sister's future without her knowing, without feeding her ego or my parents' obsession with appearances. I remember closing the file that day and leaning back in my chair. For a moment, I felt hopeful. Maybe this will make things smoother, I thought. Maybe, without them knowing, I can give Lauren a safety net. Maybe someday, when she looks back, she'll think she built everything alone, and I'll be okay with that. I had no idea that the very contract I was signing with my pen would later become the knife I'd twist out of their hands. I also didn't know yet that the people I was silently supporting, my own sister, her future husband, my parents, would soon stand in a room full of strangers and decide that my son's prosthetic hand made him unworthy of being in their perfect picture. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment success stopped being my quiet secret and became a weapon I was finally willing to use. NCs stepped into the room. I would soon discover just how little my son's feelings mattered to them. August 2023. Lauren's wedding day. The day everything shattered. The hotel was one of those high-end venues with marble floors, golden chandeliers, and staff that floated around like ghosts in perfectly pressed uniforms. The kind of place my parents adored, somewhere shiny enough to distract them from anything real. Ryan and I arrived early with Jaden, who wore a tiny gray suit he'd picked out himself. He kept flexing his prosthetic fingers nervously, the polished metallic joints catching the light like something futuristic and beautiful. "Do I look okay, Mom?" he whispered as we walked inside. I cupped his cheek gently. "You look perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect." For a moment, his shoulders relaxed. But if I had known what was coming, I would have turned around right then, taken him home, shielded him from everything that was about to happen. The ceremony itself went smoothly. Lauren glowed in her white dress. Ethan looked sharp and proud. They exchanged vows under a huge arch of white roses while my parents beamed in the front row as if they were attending royalty. I sat in the back with Ryan and Jaden, watching everything quietly. The distance felt safer, cleaner. After the ceremony came the reception, the toasts, the music, and finally, photos. And that's when everything changed. The photographer started calling families forward. First the groom's side, then the parents, then siblings. I took Jaden's hand and walked him to the group. His prosthetic fingers curled lightly around mine, warm on the inside from the sensors, cold on the outside from the titanium. He looked excited, nervous, but excited. We stepped into the frame, and then Lauren turned around. Her expression twisted instantly into something sharp and ugly. "Stop!" she snapped. "What is he doing here?" The room fell silent. Even the photographer froze mid-click. Jaden blinked. "Aunt Lauren." Lauren marched toward him, heels clicking like hammer strikes against the floor. "Get out of the frame," she hissed. "Your fake hand will ruin my wedding photos." For a moment, I didn't understand the words. Not because I didn't hear them, but because my brain refused to accept them. "Lauren," I started. But Jaden had already taken a small step back, his face crumpling, eyes wide with confusion. "My hand ruined it?" he whispered. Ryan instantly moved in front of Jaden, his voice low but shaking. "Lauren, what the hell did you just say?" She crossed her arms, unapologetic, unafraid. "You heard me. I don't want that prosthetic thing in my photos. It's distracting. It looks weird. This is my wedding. I get to decide what the pictures look like." Jaden flinched as if she had slapped him. Ryan's hands curled into fists. I stepped between them before he lost control. "Lauren," I said, keeping my voice steady only by force, "apologize right now." She actually laughed. "Apologize for wanting normal wedding photos? It's not my fault Emily's kid looks—" "Finish that sentence," Ryan growled. Mom and Dad rushed over. For one naive second, I thought maybe they'd defend their grandson. Instead, Mom rounded on me. "Emily, stop causing a scene. This is Lauren's big day." And Dad added sharply, "Control your husband. Ryan, step back before you ruin this wedding." Ruin this wedding. Not a word about Jaden. Not a word about what Lauren did. I turned to look at Jaden. He stood there trembling, biting his lip so hard it turned white. His prosthetic hand hung stiff at his side as if he wanted to hide it behind him. His eyes were red, pure confusion, hurt, shame. Something inside me cracked. "Lauren," I repeated, "apologize to my son." "Absolutely not," she sneered. "I'm not having a disabled kid in my wedding photos." That was it. The moment my sister became a stranger. Ryan moved faster than anyone else. Before I could grab his arm, he stepped forward and slapped Lauren hard across the face. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Lauren staggered backward, clutching her cheek in shock. Guests gasped. Ethan rushed to shield her. "What is wrong with you people?" Ethan shouted. "This is our wedding." Ryan fired back. "Your wife just humiliated a 10-year-old child." Mom shoved herself between us. "How dare you touch your sister?" she screamed at Ryan. "This is shameful." "Shameful?" I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. "Shameful is what Lauren said to my son. Shameful is how you're all acting right now." Dad jabbed a finger at me. "You will not ruin this day. Take your child and leave." Jaden started sobbing, heartbroken, confused, thinking he was the problem. I bent down, held his face in my hands, and whispered, "You did nothing wrong. Do you hear me? Nothing." I stood up slowly, looked at Lauren, at Ethan, at my parents, and I felt something inside me go quiet. "Frozen. Done. Let's go home," I said to Ryan without raising my voice. He nodded immediately. I took Jaden's hand, and together we walked out of that room full of people who had just shown me exactly who they were. Behind us, Lauren screamed, "Get out and don't ever come back!" I didn't turn around. I didn't give her the satisfaction. In the car, Jaden sobbed in Ryan's arms. Mom, why did Aunt Lauren say that? Is my hand ugly? Did I ruin her wedding? My heart shattered, not cracked, shattered. I pulled him into my lap, wrapping him in my arms. No, no, sweetheart. You are strong, brave, and perfect. They're the ones who did something wrong, not you. Ryan stroked his hair, trying to hold himself together. Jaden whispered, So, we won't see them anymore? I kissed his forehead. Sometimes, I said softly, we walk away from people who hurt us, even if they're family. That night, after I put Jaden to bed and wiped tears off my own face, I sat alone in my home office. My family had crossed a line that would never be uncrossed. So I picked up my phone, dialed NextCore's sales director. Owen, I said when he answered, cancel the partnership contract with Ethan Montgomery's company immediately. There was a beat of silence. Cancel? He echoed. Emily, that's $1 million partnership. Are you sure? What happened? I closed my eyes. He humiliated my son at the wedding. Owen inhaled sharply. He what? He and Lauren banned Jaden from the wedding photos because of his prosthetic hand. Owen choked on the rest. Say no more. I'll start the process, and I'll get the security footage from the venue. You need evidence. For the first time all day, I felt a flicker of something that almost resembled relief. Not happiness, just clarity. They hurt my child, I whispered, and that has consequences. The next morning, I woke up to 27 missed calls. By noon, that number had doubled. By the end of the week, I had more than 300. Most were from Lauren and Ethan. The rest were from my parents, alternating between demands for explanations and passive-aggressive guilt trips. I didn't answer a single one. I turned my phone on, silent, placed it face down on my desk, and went back to drinking my coffee while reviewing development reports from NextCore. Every now and then, Ryan would walk past me, glance toward my phone, buzzing nonstop, and shake his head. Let them sweat, he'd mutter. I didn't disagree. On Tuesday, the tone of their messages shifted. Lauren's texts started turning frantic. Emily, please answer. We need to talk. I didn't mean it like that. You know I was stressed. Then Ethan sent long paragraphs. Emily, this is a misunderstanding. We respect Jaden deeply. I hope we can resolve this issue and move forward professionally. Professionally. That word told me everything. This had nothing to do with remorse, nothing to do with Jaden, nothing to do with family. It was about the contract. The $1 million contract Emily Foster, quiet, unimpressive employee, had been secretly funding their entire company with. But even that wasn't the final blow. The real shift came Wednesday evening when Owen called. Emily, Ethan found out. I closed my laptop slowly. Found out what? That you're the owner of NextCore. Silence. Then Owen added, he broke down crying on the phone, begged me to tell you, his company is panicking. Other partners are already pulling back. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling a slow, cold breath. Of course the industry was moving fast. No company wants to be caught partnering with someone who humiliates disabled children. Behind closed doors, tech executives talk more than teenagers. One whisper spreads like wildfire. And with NextCore withdrawing its investment, Ethan's company was bleeding before he even realized he'd been stabbed. Owen cleared his throat quietly. There's more. Your parents have been calling me too. I rubbed my eyes. I am sorry, Owen. You shouldn't have to deal with this. Don't apologize, he said firmly. I'd do worse to anyone who treated my kid like that. By Friday night, the tone of every message shifted completely. No more excuses, no more justification, no more pretending. It became pure begging. A text from Lauren at 2:14 a.m. Emily, please pick up. I'm sorry, I really am. One from Ethan. I'll apologize to Jaden personally. I'll do anything. Please, let's talk. A voice message from Mom. You're being dramatic, Emily. This is a small mistake. A mother should not divide the family over something so trivial. Think of Lauren. Think of us. Trivial. Small mistake. My hands trembled, not with sadness, but with something closer to fury. Multiple times that week, I had walked past Jaden's room and found him touching the smooth metal of his prosthetic arm with a confused, hesitant expression, whispering, Why didn't Aunt Lauren want me? That wasn't trivial. That wasn't small. That was a wound. One they had carved into him with full knowledge and zero remorse until their finances and reputations were on the line. My silence was hurting them more than any words could. And I wasn't done. That sentence stayed with me long after the call ended. It was Saturday at 6:03 p.m. when the doorbell rang. Ryan was in the kitchen cooking dinner. Jaden was sprawled across the living room carpet, building a Lego castle with his prosthetic hand carefully placing each block. Babe, Ryan called out, did you order something? No. My stomach tightened. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the security monitor by the door. And there they were, all four of them, my parents, my sister Lauren, and her husband Ethan, standing at the gate like a united front of desperation. I didn't need a psychic to know why they were there. They had come for money, for rescue, for mercy. Not for Jaden. Never for him. Do you want me to get the police? Ryan asked quietly behind me. I shook my head. No, I want to hear what they think they can say. I opened the door but did not invite them inside. I stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, blocking the entrance with my body. Dad stepped forward first, wearing a strained attempt at a gentle expression. Emelika, let us in. We need to talk. Say it here, I replied. He blinked, confused. What? Whatever you came to say, I repeated. Say it here. Their eyes darted at each other nervously. Then Mom stepped forward, hands clasped over her purse like a churchgoer begging God for forgiveness. Sweetheart, your sister wasn't thinking clearly. You know how stressful weddings are. She didn't mean to hurt anyone. I stared at her, expressionless. Then Lauren spoke. Her voice was thin, shaking. Emily, I'm sorry. Truly, I regret what I said to Jaden. I shouldn't have. Her sentence dissolved into tears. Ethan quickly jumped in, nodding desperately. Emily, I apologize too. I had nothing to do with it. Please forgive us. I hope we can continue the partnership contract. Ah, there it was. The real reason. Not regret, not reflection, not empathy. Just fear of losing $1 million lifeline. I let the silence stretch until they shifted uncomfortably. Then I asked Lauren one simple question. Are you apologizing because you're sorry, or because you know I own the company Ethan needed? Her tears froze, her lips parted, but she said nothing. The silence was the answer. I didn't even need to hear words. That truth hung between us like a thick fog. Dad suddenly spoke, urgency rising in his voice. We are family, Emily. We should not let a small mistake divide us. Small mistake. There it was again. Small, I repeated, my voice flat. Lauren humiliating a 10-year-old child in front of hundreds of people. Is small to you? Dad's mouth opened and closed. No answer. Then, it happened so fast that I almost thought it was a hallucination. Ethan dropped to his knees. Right there, on the concrete. Hands clasped together like a man praying for his life. Emily, he whispered, I'm begging you. My company will collapse without this partnership. Please, please don't do this. Lauren stared at him in shock. Then, slowly, as if her legs simply gave up, she sank to her knees beside him. I'll do anything, she sobbed. Anything. Just please, don't destroy everything. Behind them, my parents looked stunned, humiliated, desperate. They were watching their hope of financial security crumble in front of them, all because of a contract they didn't even know I had given. All because they underestimated the quiet daughter, the one they thought was weak, the one they thought they could insult without consequences. I let them kneel. For a moment, just a moment, I let them feel the weight of their choices. Then I said quietly, You think kneeling here makes things right? Ethan swallowed. We're trying to show. I was joking. They froze. Ethan blinked, confused. What? You're not worthy, I said coldly. You don't deserve to apologize to my son. You don't deserve to stand in front of him. You don't even deserve to speak his name. Lauren burst into tears again. Mom gasped. Dad stared at me with an expression halfway between horror and disbelief. And then I said the words I'd been holding back for far too long. Get off my property, all of you, before I call the police. Emily, Mom reached for my hand. I stepped back. No, I said, don't touch me. You made your choices. You chose Lauren's vanity over your own grandson's dignity. They stood frozen, processing. I repeated, voice sharp as ice. Leave. Finally, slowly they stood. They turned. They walked out through the gate with hollow expressions. I closed the door before they reached the car. Inside, Ryan found me standing in the middle of the hallway, shoulders shaking. Not with sadness, but with the exhaustion of everything I had held inside for so long. He wrapped his arms around me. Thank you, he whispered, for protecting us. I pressed my forehead against his chest. No one, I murmured, hurts our son. Through the living room doorway, I saw Jaden look up from his Lego tower. He smiled at me, bright, innocent, unscarred by the world's cruelty. Mom, look, he called. I made it taller. I wiped my face, walked to him, kneeled down and pulled him into my arms. You're amazing, I whispered. And as he hugged me with both his right arm and his prosthetic one, I knew, whatever price I had to pay to protect this child, I would pay it again 1,000 times. The days after the confrontation at my door were strangely quiet. No more calls, no more messages, no more desperate attempts to reach me. It was as if the entire world, or at least the small toxic part of mine, had gone silent. But silence doesn't mean peace. Silence means people are preparing for the fallout. And the fallout came fast. Owen called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my office at Nextcore reviewing a product prototype with the engineering team. When I stepped out to answer, his voice was grim. "Emily, Ethan's company just filed for bankruptcy." I leaned against the glass wall, watching engineers through the transparent panel, tinkering with circuit boards and diagrams, people who worked hard, who respected others, who didn't tear down children to build themselves up. "What happened exactly?" I asked. Owen gave a humorless laugh. "What didn't happen?" He explained. After Nextcore withdrew the $1.2 million phased investment, Ethan's company immediately fell behind on its project development. Rumors spread quickly about why the partnership ended. Other companies in the tech sector, hearing that Ethan had insulted a disabled child, quietly backed out of future deals. Smaller investors withdrew, terrified to be connected with someone seen as unethical. Once one partner pulled out, Owen said, the rest followed, like dominoes. Within weeks, Ethan's company was gasping for air. Within 2 months, it drowned. And I never released the video, never sent out a statement, never told a soul outside my inner circle what really happened. The industry did it for me. The day Ethan filed bankruptcy, my phone buzzed 3 times in a row. 3 messages. 3 different voices revealing exactly who they were. "You're evil. Do you hear me? Evil. You destroyed us. You destroyed our future. You ruined everything." Not a single word about Jaden. Not a single word acknowledging what she did to him. Not a moment of self-reflection. Just blame. "Daniel and Lauren are broke now. Are you satisfied? This is too far, Emily." Too far? They humiliated my child. A child who trusted them. A child who cried because he didn't understand why his aunt looked at him like he was defective. But they cared only about money. Their grief was not for Wabio. "It's shameful to have a daughter willing to destroy her own family. You will regret this one day." My hands didn't even tremble when I read that one. I simply set the phone down, exhaled slowly, and felt something inside me settle. Not guilt, not triumph. Closure. The door had been cracked for years. This was the moment it shut completely. Hat was lost ethically, only financially. Always blame. Time has a strange way of revealing what matters. 2 years passed since the wedding disaster. 2 years since the last time I heard my parents' voices. 2 years since Lauren screamed that my son didn't belong in her photos. And my life? It flourished. Jaden is now 12. And somehow, despite everything, he grew into the most resilient child I've ever known. He uses his prosthetic hand with confidence now. Playing basketball, doing pull-ups in PE class, even joining an after-school robotics club. Sometimes I catch him explaining the nerve sensors in his prosthetic to his classmates with pride, as if he were showing them a new superhero gadget. He doesn't hide anymore. He doesn't shrink. He doesn't apologize for existing. The world tried to break him. Instead, it sharpened him. As for my company, Nextcore expanded to 2 new offices in Los Angeles and Seattle. Our staff doubled. Our valuation climbed toward $80 million. I stayed the way I've always been. Jeans, quiet routines, dinner with Ryan and Jaden every night. Wealth didn't change me. But everything we built together, it gave me power. Power I used exactly once, for the right reason. And I'd do it again. I didn't block my distant relatives. They still occasionally bring news back to me. My parents still live in the same house, still tell everyone I'm an ungrateful daughter, still insist the family was destroyed over nothing. They still don't ask about Jaden, not once. Lauren and Ethan divorced. From what relatives say, their marriage exploded into constant fights after the bankruptcy. Each blamed the other. Ethan blamed Lauren for humiliating Jaden. Lauren blamed Ethan for not being able to save the company. Their home became a battlefield of resentment, accusations, and shattered pride. When I heard about their divorce, I felt not joy, not triumph, just sadness. The kind of sadness you feel for strangers who once shared your blood. That tells me everything I need to know. Some people accused me of being too harsh. They said I should have forgiven Lauren, that a wedding is stressful, that emotions run high, that she didn't really mean it. But I asked them, How small does someone have to be to humiliate a child to protect a photo? How shallow does a heart have to be to treat disability like an eyesore? How twisted must a person be to value aesthetic perfection over emotional protection? Family or not, there are boundaries you cannot cross. And they crossed everyone. Last night, I was sitting on our living room floor with Jaden, helping him attach the final piece to a Lego spaceship he'd been building for weeks. His prosthetic hand clicked and tightened gracefully as he snapped the last brick into place. "Mom," he said proudly, "look, I finished it." I smiled. "It's perfect." Then he looked at me with those clear, gentle eyes and asked quietly, "Do you think Aunt Lauren still hates me?" My heart squeezed, but I didn't hesitate. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "She doesn't hate you. She never knew how to love you properly." He pondered this for a moment, then nodded and leaned against me. And in that moment, with my son's head resting on my shoulder, I realized I never once regretted my choice. Not for a second, because protecting your child is not cruelty. It's the purest form of love. So here's my final question to you. Was I wrong? Did I go too far? Or is standing up for your child worth any cost? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more real stories like this one.